Waggy Motors. It's been a week since the rally. Stoked. Honestly gassed. Best weekend up there with of my life because we did actually survive. It was so much prep and the car ran faultlessly. We literally didn't burn an ounce of oil the whole rally. It just we were valve tapping the bloody engine the whole way. It just loved it. These little 1.4 engines are so revvy, and it just seemed to really enjoy being beaten up. Ugh, if I can open the bonnet, it was perfect. No coolant burn, no oil burn, all fluids perfect, and we weren't being gentle to it. It was constant redlining. We just needed to eke out every single ounce of performance we could from it, and it was brilliant. However, we did have one issue. Very final stage of the rally. There is the back of the car, obviously. Unfortunately, it's difficult to get a comparison because I ripped my mud flap off reversing the other day, getting it back into the shed. But that's nice and straight. Very final stage of the rally, we went past a wall, and as you can see, the back of my wheel is now sticking out from the inside of my mud flap. And that is because we went past a wall, hit a granite outcrop, very last two corners of the rally, and bent our back axle. So that is the angle of the wheel. We've got some sick JDM camber. But if we come around the bottom here, you'll see there's a bend right there. So we have bent the rear beam, and so because of that, we're going to have to fit a new one. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that that's our new rear beam. Fortunately, my good friend Rob managed to find one of these, and it was a little bit crusty. Gave it a bit of a spritz with a wire wheel, painted it with some hammerite just to protect it from any further rust, but they're big, thick bits of metal, so I'm not too worried about that. We are going to spend today popping that on here so she's nice and straight and won't be crabbing anywhere, and then we'll have a pretty good, ready to run again rally car. Another note as well, very fortunately, so this type of axle here, you can see from this join here, this is what's called the I axle, which is later models of the Ford Puma and the Ford Fiesta. That one there is also an I axle, and so my rear suspension, my Gasgold suspension, is formulated for the I type of rear beam. However, my spare rear beam, which is miles over there, is actually, and I didn't realise this, the fork type rear beam, where you basically have a solid bit of metal here, and then the suspension goes over in a fork either side of the metal, and you put a bolt through it. And so if we'd bent our beam any earlier on in the rally and had to do any more stages, we would have had to pull out because we don't have the right spare rear beam. So it is a proper blessing in disguise that we made it this far. So rear beam's going to go on. First step is going to take the wheels off. We've got to tie the calipers. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie the calipers and the whole brake, basically rear hub, to the suspension strut, and then unclip the suspension strut from the bottom down here. You can see there's a bolt right there. Pull the suspension strut off, drop the back of the rear beam down, put the jack underneath it, undo the two bolts under, you can barely see them, this bolt here, and the other bolt to the other side. They'll drop the whole rear beam down, and then we will get to fitting the other one. In theory, this rear hub assembly comes off as all one solid assembly, so we shouldn't have to dismantle anything other than the 4 bolts which hold it in place. But we'll see if theory and practice align. So as I said before, the caliper, the bracket, the hub itself, and the disc should all basically stay in situ. If I cable tie them all up to here, then we can unbolt the bolts at the back. These silvery ones just here that you can see, that should all come off in one piece. We've got to unclip the handbrake cable, which is just cable tied down at the moment. So we'll unclip that. Make sure we don't put too much pressure on our braided lines. My Puma is running the ST170 rear brake conversion, so it has discs in the back instead of drums, which is why it won't be the same for all other Pumas. But for me, this is my method. We'll see if it works. Right, so I've done the side off camera just to make sure I didn't embarrass myself, but this is now all loose and hanging from those cable ties. There is a spacer that we have between here and here, this aluminium spacer that we use just to make the track of the car a little bit wider, so I've had to take that out as well. But this is all hanging in situ. Beam is currently resting on this axle stand. Suspension is unhooked as well. We're going to do the same on the other side, and then hopefully we should be able to just drop the 2 bolts down at the back here, and the whole beam should drop down. Just loosening everything first before we use the impact gun. Lovely. Right, so caliper hanging. That's our spacer there. We should be able to just shimmy that out. There she is. That sits between those 2 surfaces, just gives us a couple mil extra track for a bit more grip. Not that I know how to use it, but in theory it's there. Those are the bolts which came out. This whole caliper assembly is now nice and loose, held up by these cable ties. Hopefully we can now drop this. Fingers crossed. This bolt here, I think that's a 19. This is a 15 behind it. Spanner on that. Well, actually, I think it's going to have to be probably gun on that side, spanner that side. And hope that it comes down easily. She's a bit of a fight, but she's coming off. I just needed to take the exhaust bracket off, or the exhaust rubber, sorry, so there was a bit more play in the exhaust to get a socket behind it. Broke it off, and it's coming. This is going to shock you to hear this, but obviously I was a big idiot when I put this in. Nuts off, bolt cannot get out because it's fouling on the sill here. So obviously when I put this bush in, I put the nuts and the bolts in the wrong way around, and then just, did this whole bracket up instead. So I'm going to have to take the whole bracket out and drop it down from there. I love cars so much. Look at that. Okay, well, it hasn't moved. Something's obviously sticking it down. Yeah, that's loose. I reckon it's just held in situ by the other side. Sweet! Right. What the hell is holding you up? So those bolts are out, but the, hang on, am I leaking fuel? Never mind. Those bolts are out, but it's not dropping down. I think the reason for that is because I undersealed this and I pretty much immediately put the rear beam back on. So I'm wondering if it just needs a little bit of a hammer to drop it down. That is loose, but I don't know why it's not falling down. Sounds. Almost died. Not a good day at the shed if you don't almost die. So here's the old rear beam that's just come down. You can see this side nice and straight here. This side, bendy wendy. I mean, you could maybe try straighten that out, but it would never be right. It would probably be a little bit structurally compromised now that it's had a bend in it. And plus, these are pretty easy to find, so we may as well just fit a new one. Got to take these brackets off and then figure out how to get these poly bushes into that new one. Right, so just knock the central pin through the bush. Lovely. And then, have to wash that off. Big socket, big big extension. Beautiful. These old bushes have been in this thing for, what, 26, 27 years. And so there's no way that's coming out by me just hammering it alone. I can't find the bush removal tool, so my plan is drill out all this rubber, and then I'm going to have to hacksaw this and this apart in order to cut it, and hopefully it will just drop out. But we'll see how that works. Right, that took so much longer than I thought it would. It was just a nightmare to drill out all the alloy and all the rubber. There's the remnants. There's the remnants. But it's now out, and now we've just got this inner ring that we're going to have to cut out. You can see the two rings there. We're going to have to cut out this ring in order to hopefully just break this into two parts, and it should just slide out from there. We'll see how good that goes. Everything else has been fighting us so far, but surely it can't be any worse. The bush was really pissing me off, so I've decided just to have a little campfire and burn the remnants out. I've got my fire extinguisher here just in case. Nice little cozy campfire, but it is just it's not playing ball. We've had the bushing push tool out. That hasn't really worked. So I'm burning out all the remaining rubber so I can properly see what I'm going to hacksaw into, and then hacksaw into that. But it's not playing ball. Right, it's a new day. The bush wasn't playing ball, and I ran out of time. But we are back. Bigger hammer, bigger chisel. Just abuse it till it comes out is the play. There she is. There's one in a ring. Out. That sucked. Now to do it again. I've decided to carry on the fire and brimstone approach. We're going to use a blowtorch and burn the other bush out. Right, so about 2 hours has passed, and we've got the second one out. It took us, me and Tony is a whiz with everything. It took us 2 hours of heating, hammering, lots of swearing. The inside ring of the second bush is finally out, so now in theory it should be the home straight of just getting the old stuff, well, the old bushes, the old new bushes put back in. Beam on, good to go. Winning slowly. So the new poly bushes just slip in by hand. Ooh. With a bit of a wiggle. I'll have to do that with two hands. Beautiful. Right, we've jacked the beam into place, and so now it's just about bolting it in, and then we should be pretty good to go. Right, bolt suspension in. Right, hub assemblies back on, spacers in, hubs on. Just got to do these 2 last bolts and then we're good to go. Right, that is the rear beam on. That was a lot of effort for a job which probably required very little technical skill. Those inner rings were such a nightmare to get off. But rear beam is on now, and it looks a lot better. As you can see, my wheel is no longer sticking out from my mud flap. It was originally sticking out there. So we're nice and straight. And if we have a look around here, nice and flush. Ready to go racing again. Beautiful.